You're welcome back. You're still watching Business Incorporated here in Channels Television. Well, the world, including OPEC, has now come to agree that there has to be that there's a need to embrace alternative source of energy along with the use of fossil fuel. The volatility in the price of oil following the war going on in Ukraine has emphasized the exploration or the need to explore renewable energy, which Europe has been doing and is talking about expanding. Well, also in West Africa, there are some projects going on. We have Ted George. Ted George is the Chief Narrative Officer at Cleo's Advisory in the UK to tell us what's going on with renewable energy in West Africa. Hello, Ted. Good afternoon.
Hi, good to be back.
Good to have you back. So which renewables offer the most potential for Africa when we look at the potentials that Africa has?
Well, I think always top of the agenda has been hydroelectric. And you can imagine there's a lot of hydropower stations in West Africa. I think of in Nigeria. You also think on the Congo River. But one of the big issues there is if you don't have industry right next to it using it, you need to transmit that power. And that can be very difficult if it's thousands of miles. And also, you've got to think about some of the impacts socially. If you think about the GERD, the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, that's causing huge tensions between Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Egypt, which depend on the flows that come from the Nile. So it's complicated. But for me, the obvious one is solar. Not only is there a huge amount of solar resources all across Africa, but it's not just about the big scale thing. It's about distributed power. People having solar units in their houses, let's say in remote or rural areas, and that means they can power their phones, they can power the internet, they can power lighting, their refrigerators, etc. There's a huge opportunity here with solar, and I think that's the really key one which is being pushed out across Africa.
So it seems the conversation around renewable energy has been expanded at this time. Maybe the war in Ukraine and the need for power and the impacts of Russia's supply, being cut off from the global space has also boosted that conversation. Do you think that one of the lessons from the war would be people embracing renewable energy more?
Absolutely. And I think this is the thing. When we see the oil price shoot up to $100 or higher, as it's been in recent weeks, it suddenly changes the economics. 10 years ago, solar and wind were much more expensive than oil and gas. Just before COVID, they were almost exactly the same price in terms of the amount of cost to generate per kilowatt. But the fact is, if you bear in mind how much gas and oil prices have gone up, it's cheaper solar power now as well. So there is on one side, there's a clear economic incentive, but the other one is strategic, as you said. No one can steal your solar. Nobody can cut off the wind to you, but they can cut off gas. And that is what Europe is terrified about at the moment. So I think this whole idea of resource independence is actually pushing renewables much higher up the agenda.
And then following the COP26, have we seen an end of coal? I mean, this has been a long-standing conversation. And then it's when there's a disruption in gas, then countries turn to coal. And what does it mean for Africa, especially countries that export coal?
Yeah, well, I think time is definitely up for coal, but it's not immediate. So much of power and industry is produced from coal, but coal is by far the dirtiest. To get it out of the ground is the worst, and the amount of emissions it does, not just of carbon dioxide, but carbon monoxide and other pollutants is terrible. So it is not a good source of fuel, but we're going to depend on it for a long time to come. So there's a transition underway here, and I think the thing is that the traditional ways that coal is used and burned cannot continue. But in the future, there's all these other new technologies out there. It's a resource that could be used in another way. So I think certainly for the big exporters, if you particularly look in Southern Africa, so many of the coal fields there, the long-term business model is going to have to change because we can't keep on burning coal the way we were before.
But, one of the issues that also come out is the cost, of ignoring or embracing the green energy, the alternative energy, the cost for the economy, if we have to do away with coal, for instance, the cost of developing the solar or the hydro, Is Africa ready for that cost?
Well, absolutely, because I think so much of it, if you look at it, partly it's got to be led by governments who basically want the projects to go ahead. But so many of the big solar and the wind projects around the world, which make up the majority of them, are actually primarily funded by private investors. It might be asset managers, it might be private equity, even venture capital as well. The expertise is out there, the technology is out there. And remember, there's a lot of wind in the world, there's a lot of sun. It's just that it's about where is the technology best used for a particular particular area. So the thing is, I certainly think on the solar front, we're going to see a lot more development. And I think also, particularly in these areas of things like biomass and bioenergy, although there are some green concerns around them.
Well, just before we let you go, how green are these renewables actually?
Well, I think the bottom line is, look, some of them are very green. If you've already factored in the cost for example, producing wind turbines or let's say producing PV solar cells, the actual power that they produce is almost totally green. But if you take something like biomass, burning charcoal, if you're talking about making biofuels, that's when there's a real question about the CO2 coming out. So I think the real thing is read the small print and check the kind of green credentials you have, because not all of them are green.
Yeah, read the small print. Thank you so much, Ted George, Chief Narrative Officer at Chaos Advisory in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Cool. See you next time.